We explained that the advantage of the bow and arrow, of course, over the original weapons of war, which were hand-to-hand combat, and the bow and arrow has the ability to reach a distant enemy. And how does it do so? By pulling backwards towards the self, which is the paradox. You want the projectile to go that way, but in order for it to go that way, you have to pull in the other direction. Basic law of nature that was discovered and exploited and used to create the bow and arrow. So explain that symbolically, spiritually, there's the immediate, obvious enemy, and there's the distant, elusive, not so clearly defined, hiding in the shadows, enemy within self. So the obvious enemy, meaning the obvious obstacle that needs to be overcome first and foremost as we grow spiritually in our relationship with Hashem and with others, the first thing that must be dealt with is behavior. Behavior is obvious, that which is right before your eyes, you see it, it's tangible. And to address behavior, the Torah gave us instructions. That's what the word Torah means. The word Torah means instructions. So it's an instruction manual by which to live and behave and conquer the self, as it were, and the world on the behavioral, tangible level, which is step number one. And that's critical. And that, of course, is possible to achieve that by everyone. As we've explained and explored in other occasions, when the Torah says, for example, love your fellow, as Rashi explains, it's not talking to your heart. It's saying behave in a loving way. The same is true of Hashem as well. Love God, the commandment is essentially observe his commandments, be loyal to his wishes, and that's the expression of love. And that's the critical foundation, is behavior. So I've explained that the metaphor for that is the weapons of war that hand to hand, your enemy is in front of you and clearly define that here's how you defeat him. Here's how we defeat the Yetzer Hara on the behavioral level. Yetzer Hara is pulling you one direction and you don't even know what you're supposed to do. So here are the instructions. You're supposed to do this, not that. We also said a metaphor in Torah for that. This is the revealed aspect of Torah. The revealed aspect of Torah, by that I mean Chumash, the Gemara, the Talmud, the Halachas, etc. They're all practical. There are many layers to practical, so it's also psychological and philosophical, but it's still tangible. The metaphor is water. Torah is compared to water. Living waters, Mayim Chayim. And the reason that the Torah is compared to water, or the truth is the reason water behaves the way it does, it's because it's a reflection of the Torah. That's what, it's not the other way around. It's like there's water, we look for a symbol. For the Torah, water seems to fit the bill. It's not the way it works, it's the opposite. Spirituality precedes physicality. The higher worlds, the higher truths come first. So there's Torah, and therefore there is water in this world that reflects this dimension of Torah. Clear? It's true not of water, but of everything. So water gives life, Torah gives life. There can be no life without water, there's no life without Torah. Water comes down to the lowest level. Water will work its way down to the lowest level. So too, halacha deals with the lowest level, and everybody is part of it equally. Moses, or the simplest Jew, puts on film exactly the same way. There are no distinctions in halacha. Like water will find the lowest level. And many other properties that we see in observing water, like, for example, water causes things to merge together. halachically everybody's treated equal. There's no distinction in behavioral level. Everybody has to keep Shabbos the same way. Halachas apply to everybody exactly the same way. Water causes things to stick together. Now, again, and it's also transparent. And many, it's cool by nature. Just to address the coolness by nature of water unless disturbed. We're not demanding passion initially. Just do it. Do it. Do the mitzvah. That's the foundation of being Jewish, of any relationship, is your behavior. I love you, but I behave like a monster. No. You love me? Thank you very much. Behave like you love me. That's the first step. And that's what the instructions of Torah. That's the hand-to-hand combat. We're dealing with the tangible, before our eyes, the sensual, physical, right here. But it is a deeper battle. The Torah is not mandated we even address till before Mashiach comes. Because we've got to get the water dimension clear, nourished by the water. Now we're ready for the fire. The fire without water is dangerous. But if there's water, there's foundation. We know how to use the fire, then the fire, warmth and light. And adds a whole new dimension to life. Warmth, light, metaphorically, warmth, enthusiasm, light, enlightenment, insight. That's Kabbalah and Chassidus that came along at the end of exile. As we explained last week, the whole process, the whole evolution, starting with Rabbi Shimon Yochai, the founder work. Moishe Rabbeinu did, of course, by teaching it from day one, but then Rabbi Shimon articulated it in the Zohar, but then the Zohar disappears. It's discovered, the Rizal authenticates it, and Kabbalah is born, and then the Baal Shem Tov and Chassidus, all the last fairly rapid evolution of the end of exile. It's all dealing with what dimension of Torah? The hidden dimension, the spirituality, the heart, the mind. The mind, not just in knowing what to do, but what are we doing? What is the mitzvah? God, understanding divinity. Actually, the verse tells us we need to know God. It's an explicit verse in the Torah, and many like it. Da et Elokei avicha ve'avdeo b'lev shalom. Know God, your Lord, and serve him with the whole heart. We're commanded to know God, but knowing itself is relative. There's know what he wants, and then there's know him. The simplest and deepest meaning of the verse is know him. But that comes later. That's the end of exile now as a preparation for Mashiach, when that's going to be the pursuit of the whole world exclusively all the time. As the prophet Yeshayahu says, the Rambam makes it clear, famous words of the Rambam, in that era, the pursuit of the whole world, all of it, will be nothing other than to know God alone. As a bridge to that is Chassidus. So now we're dealing with what? Not just the external, but the internal. The internal of itself, the soul, the internal of the world, God, divinity. In other words, the revealed aspect of Torah, water, deals with the commandments. Chassidus deals with the commandment. It's behind the commandments. Who are you? What is your purpose? What's behind the facade of the physicality, the spiritual dynamics, the spiritual worlds? What's behind the soul? You see, the body, we see a physical body, but what are the inner dynamics that are working and animating with this? That's what Chassidus deals with. Now, the metaphor to the bow and arrow is, as we said last week, I'm kind of summarizing, but using different language a little bit to expand. We're dealing with an enemy that's not obvious. Motives, understanding, feeling. And it's distant because it's hard. Motives are very complex. Easy to fool yourself. Easy to fool yourself when it comes to motives and feelings. And think that one is very holy and so on, and really probe it deeper. It's all self-serving. Honor for glory, recognition, to feel good, earn a place in heaven, with all kinds of agenda. It's not simple. The world of practicality, action is simple. The mezuzah is kosher, it's kosher, finished. Not kosher, not kosher. Put on film, the right way, you fulfill the mitzvah. Done. It's black and white. It's tangible. There's a point where you've done the mitzvah. You've done it, and that's it. Move on. But the heart, the next mitzvah. But we're talking about this inner state of being. There's no moving on. It's a constant work, and it's very subtle. And a more difficult terrain to conquer inwardly, but they're all connected, is the mind, in the sense of fully understanding and perceiving the divine. That's the biggest challenge, because we're finite human beings and God's infinite. They're very difficult, very distant. They're distant frontiers. The bow and arrow. The bow goes this way, then the approach hidden, not obvious enemy. So that's Kabbalah and Chassidus. It goes very deep, reveals the depth of Torah. And we're saying it's level 1, that's the projectile, the arrows of light. It's able to illuminate the dark recesses of the heart and illuminate the mind and following the metaphor here, and bring illumination, divinity, godliness, the inner dimension of Torah, to these subtle, obtruse, not obvious areas of our lives. Friends, people go through a whole life trying to figure themselves out. Why do I behave the way I do? And it's not easy, right? The world of psychology, psychiatry. But we're going beyond psychology and psychiatry. We're going the spiritual dynamics, the really core of it all. Tanya, basically, that's the big revolution of Tanya, was to lay bare the inner workings of the soul and the divine for the first time ever, articulated intellectually. Kabbalah, it's all there, but it's all metaphysical language and very mystical, which is why it's called mysticism. Chabad is the first time before Mashiach comes as a bridge. The last bridge to Mashiach's coming is really known, intellectually at least, to the degree that we can, in preparation for the real knowledge, which when Mashiach comes, God's revealed. More about that some other time, but we're getting the general idea. So that's the bow and arrow. Deep and reach the distant here doesn't mean physically distant, it means spiritually distant, not obvious, mind, heart, not tangible, physical, so not so easy to master. And then we said last week as well that the same metaphor explains what Chabad is on another perspective, the whole shlichus thing. But only Chabad, only the Rebbe, conceived of and implemented this whole idea of sending shluchim, young couples, to the furthest corners of the globe without any infrastructure. But their fellow Jew and the rest of the world said this is wrong and foolhardy. That's what the Orthodox Torah Yeshiva world said, very emphatically. The Babbage outreach, friends, was mocked. And God is a thing of the past for the most part. I think maybe entirely, literally mocked. I remember they would say, you put on film on a religious Jew, you're desecrating film. You're desecrating film. Even when the cure of outreach began in the non-Chabad world, and it was a response to, hey, we better start doing something. Let's go, Chabad's taken over. That was the motive. Initially, to be perfectly honest, I'm old enough to know all this. But what's the point? It's history. We should know that. But that was the motive. But even that Kirov, it didn't go out putting film on people. You made a yeshiva, and so when you invited someone to come and learn, and then when you felt he was ready, put on film. I know people in the early days, probably still, they're going to these yeshivas, Eshator or whatever, and for months not putting on film. No one asked them to, because you're not ready. Learn. That's because you don't learn Chassidus, you don't really, this is a soul that's just as Jewish as yours and perfect in God. So even the Kirov, it's changing now, it's starting to appreciate that every Jew can put on film, and sure, they must now. But that took a long time for Chabad to get through, and it's still not, we haven't finished. And that comes as a result of a really deep understanding of what Torah is, what is tefillah. You don't know what, if you think that this guy is ready to put on film, but just off the street, and he doesn't keep Shabbos and all the rationale that you have, but he's impure, he didn't wash Nagavasa that morning. You don't understand not what tefillin is, not what a Jew is, not what God is. So it's death. You got the external. You don't have the depth. And therefore, you're not going to do it. You'll mock it. But with a deep understanding of what the Sham is, what Hashem is, what a mitzvah is, of course, you'll grab your fellow Jew, give him a hug and a kiss, come put on film. And moreover, the world isn't the enemy. Without Hasidus, you're afraid of the world because it's an unholy, terrible, impure place. And what does Hasidus do? The deep understanding, that's the facade, yes. But the inner essence, God is in everything, divine providence, creating godliness behind, and you understand, it's just not slogans. You understand the law in chapter after chapter in Tanya, and in the thousands of Maimorim, thousands that the Rabbi and the Rebbes revealed and toiled to explain to us, so that we should see, understand that, and sense the divine in everything. So what are you afraid of? Go there and reveal it through a mitzvah. So Chabad, boys, girls, young men and women, go out to Siberia, quite literally, or Midtown US where there's nothing, spiritually speaking. They go there, make Chabad houses, and with joy and fearlessly, I'm sorry, because you see godliness, everything just waiting to be revealed. And that, not just that, and that's the truth of reality. The truth of reality is Hashem. Now, these are slogans. If you don't want Hasidus, like that sounds great, what does it mean? You learn and toy to understand that the reality is God. You look at a Jew and you see the Sham. So that's the other metaphor. Shlichus, arrows of light, missiles of light, long. This is in holiness, bringing light, explosion of light wherever they go in revolutions. That's a summary of last week, using a little bit of different language, but it's really the same idea. We wanted to explain this cryptic story somewhat in the Torah with King David and King Saul. David Melech and Shlomo Melech. Now we all know at the outset that David Melech is the forerunner of the founder of the Davidic dynasty, which after he becomes king, thereafter all true legitimate kings are his descendants. He's from the tribe of Yehuda, you know that fact, and Mashiach therefore is a descendant of David Melech, the tribe of Judah. This is all stated in the Torah. Moishe Rabbeinu blesses the tribe of Yehuda, as does Yaakov before him, as the leader of the scepter and the departing from Yehuda, the king, etc. The lion, that's the symbol of the line of Judah. King Saul from the tribe of Benjamin, he was the first king appointed by the prophet Samuel, correct? Yeah, sure. Now, it really on the surface about Hasidus, I'm not going to explain the whole story. It's hard to understand the envy. I mean, this King Saul, he was so envious of King David's popularity, King David, that he literally wanted him eliminated. That's just, on the surface, it sounds, what? How could this possibly be? Now, in the light of Hasidus, it's a whole, like everything, it's a whole different dynamic going on. I'll just tell you to whet your appetite to find out. About King Saul, the Torah says, Book of Kings, Book of Samuel. So, that King Saul was a very tall, handsome man. He was literally head and shoulders taller than everybody else. A very imposing, tall, striking man. That's physically, because it is exploited. That means his shoulders physically in the human body represent right chesed, emotions, right emotion, left emotion. It's a place of the intellect. Intellect is the highest faculty of man. His emotions on the level of the people's intellect. Without explaining, but you get the idea. He was completely in a different world, a higher world. That the greatest intellectuals of the people were like just emotion, not intellect, compared to his insight and understanding. And his IQ, quite literally. Brilliant man. And spiritually. We don't just mean this, he had the IQ that was way beyond spiritually, his perception, etc. It was far beyond everybody else. So we have to explain this jealousy. I'm not explaining it now. But we will get some insight, a little bit into the story here. So the story is, so he has a son, King Saul, Jonathan, Jonathan. And Jonathan and David, our sages, cite as the example of the most altruistic true friendship. True love of friends is Jonathan and David. So the story there is, it's Jonathan, Jonathan. So he tells question they're facing is King Saul's anger and jealousy abated or not. Clearly, King Saul was struggling with himself. So what's going to be the test? King David needs to know. Can he come back to the palace, or must he remain in hiding? Saul Malachal Nafshi. The Saul first figure that he composed in the desert, Judean desert, fleeing Saul. Can he come back or not? So Jonathan devises this plan, this ruse, this plan by which he will be able to secretly, no one should know, advise his friend, King David, whether he's welcome or not welcome, whether his life is in danger or not. What's going to happen? So it's tomorrow's Rishchot. We read this Haftorah anytime Shabbos is Erev Rishchot, because it begins with tomorrow's Rishchot. Look out for it. So tomorrow's Rishchot says, and you don't come. You don't come. And I'll see from my father's reaction, the place is missing, and how he reacts, then I'll know whether you're welcome or not. The reaction was such that he wasn't. But what's the sign he's going to tell? I was going to send a message, stay away. So it's very strange. This whole concocts this whole means. I'm going to go, he says, this all means by which you're going to find out. So you hide in the field where I practice archery. You listen to what's going on. Don't show yourself. You're not going to see anything. You're hiding in the thickets. And I'll have my assistant, my caddy. This is not for the golf balls, is to fetch back the arrows. So I'm going to shoot at the target. Now you don't see where the arrow is going because you're hidden. So you're going to listen. You hear me say, if I say to my caddy, for 3 days, by the way, you have to hide very well. So I shall shoot 3 arrows. That's why 3 arrows to the side, as though I shot at the mark but missed it. And I'll send the youth to go get the arrows. And if I say to him, that the arrows are on this side by the mark, by the target, the arrows are there by the target, you know all is well. Come back. King Saul is reconciled. But if I tell, you hear me say the youth, no, it's way further, it's beyond, it's far from the target, then you'll know you stay far away. Clear? So if you hear, says Jonathan, the way I talk to you, to the lad, to the nod, you'll know whether to come back or not. Yeah, clear. The story's clear, basically. Yes. So the metaphor is the bow and arrow. It's a very strange, complicated way to get the message. But now we understand. I'll say it first in a word, and then we'll back it up with explanation. Are we ready? Are we ready for the revelation of the inner dimension of Torah? The bow and arrow that will conquer the world, the inner distant terrain, or not? If we're near and ready, in other words, the real question is, if our sages say, if King Saul had reconciled with David, Mashiach would have come. Mashiach would have come there. King Saul made several mistakes, which we'll explain in a minute. Leaving one of the Amalekites, Agag, alive, then thoroughly killed. Saul struggled, and I'll tell you why. But if Saul would be recognized with King David, then all his goods come out, we're ready for the redemption. The bow and arrow, the revelation of the inner secrets of Torah and the elusive, distant places of the heart and physically the world will be illuminated. And we're ready for the final stretch, moments before redemption. If I say the arrow is far, it means we've got work to do to get there. It's been a long time since then, till Hasidus came and the bow and arrow now is part of our spiritual arsenal. Okay, that's the general idea. So now you understand why the bow and arrow, because really the whole discussion here is ready for the Messianic year or not, which as you now understand is symbolized by the bow and arrow, the deep secrets of the Torah, revealed inwards, and therefore illuminating the darkest corners. Clear? Now, the few minutes we have left, a little bit to understand. Just told you that King Saul was this great man, and so the jealousy of King David, etc. So in a word, it's this, friends. King Saul represents, as I told you, towering intellect. He was a towering person physically, but a towering intellect. We find the name Saul, actually, Shaul, way before he was born. Book of Genesis. There was a Shaul king. He came from Merachayvis Hanor, the expansive river. Book of Exodus, Pashas by Yitzhak, listing all of the race kings, descendants of Esau, Yaakov. One of the figures there, so we get, it's Shaul Merachayvis Hanor. Saul from the broad river. What does this symbolically mean? The broad river is understanding, being. You understand something, you expand and you elaborate it. By Ravula and Tanya, you all know what Bina means. Chacham is the spark of the idea, undeveloped. You see, Bina is the development of the idea. The broad, expansive river that comes from the initial wellspring hidden beneath the ground bursts. That's how the rivers come from. And then they expand, go to the sea, etc. They all come from subterranean sources. That's Chachma. Bina is the open, expansive. The word Bina, the word binyan, to build. You have an idea, you build it, you elaborate. So Saul was the great intellectual, understanding, everything had to be understood. What he was missing was King David, who represents bitul, self-effacement, complete surrender. David HaMelech is Malchut. Malchut means, let's make it very simple. Malchut means what? Governance, sovereignty. A true king, his whole definition is the people, nothing else. A true leader is his whole, there's no self. His entire being is for the people. That's one of the meanings of the word, or why Malchut is associated with complete self-surrender and devotion, because that, in fact, is what leadership is. It's the voice of the people. It's the people. And that's David HaMelech. So in contrast, there's Nas and Nishma. We're coming to Matan Torah. There's two elements to the relationship. We have to accept what God says. We also have to understand and engage and contribute, as we spoke yesterday in Shul, right? So who represents what? Which one represents the understanding and the development? That would be who? Understanding and development. It's King Saul. It's Bina. King Saul, towering intellect. Who represents surrender and self-effacement and sacrifice? King David. Bittul. Again, governance. It's not about intellectual rumination and analysis. It's about the people. It's about practical laws that will keep us safe in functioning society. That's what governance means. That's King David, right? They're opposites. Again, Nasa v'nishma. Nasa, we accept, we do, complete bittul. And nishma is understanding and analysis and questions. So already we are beginning to understand the tension between the two, because King Saul, which represents understanding, and King David is not about understanding per se, it's about complete surrender. It's a contradiction. Wait a minute, I've got a question. I've got to analyze this. That's why Saul made the mistakes that he did, because it's all based on, in the words of Chassidus, Allah acharatam. Everything had to be rationalized. When the war with the Amalekites, he left the choicest animals. He figured rationally, it's a terrible waste. Offer them as an offering to God. He had pity on Agag. He destroyed everyone but left the king. He reasoned they're no longer a threat, so the king is impotent and powerless. Let him live for one night. So Samuel told him, till Samuel killed him. But that night, he wasn't impotent. He impregnated a girl, and the Amalek seed continued. Why? The Saul went rational. He was given commandments to destroy Amalek. He said, yes, but we'll leave the choice, and we're going to use the fat choice sheep of Amalek as an offering to Hashem. Isn't that beautiful? What's the point of killing Agag? The whole army he's nothing. He's just a figurehead without nothing to be head of. So logically, what's so terrible about letting him live? He failed because he went using logic alone, and he failed commandment. King David represents, per se, complete bittul. Continue next week or whatever it's going to be. The ultimate is the fusion of the two. Fusion. Deepest understanding, but not based on the ego and the self, but a complete surrender to God. The fusion of King David and King Saul. And that was the question here, if they're ready. And if that fuses, that's the bow and arrow, the deepest secrets, illuminate the darkest world. It's the opposite direction. It's going inward and that way. Going inward, that's kind of soul understanding. With King David, with that understanding, if you're a King David, you can conquer the world. More about this next week. We're getting a bit of a sense of it. If we maybe a bit different subject, but this will be enough. The bow and arrow is the symbol. Are we ready for this? Are we ready for the marriage, as it were, the fusion of intellect and faith, intellect and surrender, the deepest intellect and the deepest surrender, which is on the surface opposites. If it's intellectual, then it's not surrender. You got to understand. No, the fusion of the two. Therein lies God's will and desire and the truth. And that's deeply represented by the bow and arrow. This way, goes inwards and boom, going to the furthest reach. Okay, I'll give you a bit of the outline. Next week, I guess we'll talk more about Shavuos, but we did already. Nasa v'nishma, it's all tied in. Nasa v'nishma, Nasa is King David, Nishma is King Saul. You need both. And we'll explore what does it mean both and why that's the whole point. And that, in fact, is the meaning of Hashem, Holy King. These two names of God represent these two primary names, transcendence and understanding, expansion, and surrender. Above and within, it's all about the fusion of opposites. Engagement, transcendence. Stay within, be above. Be part of the world, not part of the world. That's what the world is telling us. You are human, but not really. You're part of it, but not really. Yeah, that's the Jew. Fusion of beyond and within. Nature and beyond nature. It's all different articulations of this dynamic of Saul and King David. The bow and arrow, this way or that way? No, it's both. Only this way do you go that way, the deepest way. We haven't explained it fully yet, but we get a sense, certainly, based on what we learned so much. Sure. Okay, friends, thanks for joining. Have a wonderful week. Shavua Tov.